Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Poland Daily History. Today we are at the city of Lublin. We will meet with Mr. Martin Delbout, a Dutchman that moved to Lublin, fell in love with the city, and now worked as a tour guide showing the world Lublin's most crown jewels. We are in this very special room with all the exhibitions, artifacts, paintings, medieval weapon. But what I noticed is there's also a wooden table in the center of the room, and I was wondering if there are any significance to this particular table that's situated here.
This table is a very interesting table. It's a very old table, and it is related to the devil.
The devil?
The devil.
All right.
So we have an amazing legend here in Lublin, and it dates back till 1578. So quite a long time ago. In Lublin, we had the Crown Court of Poland. So we were literally a significant place to be. The highest appeal court of Poland was settled here on the Rynnyk in the former city hall during the summer and during the spring. And literally the nobility needed to come over to have their court sessions.
Right.
And during the winter and fall, the court sessions were held in Piotrów, a small place here also in Poland. Actually, it was a very good thing to be a judge. Nowadays, if you want to become a judge, you need to study law, you need to do your bar exam, you need to practice a lot, and you need to have a lot of knowledge.
All that thing you have to go through just to get into law and become a judge.
And you need to have maybe a bit of age behind you. At the time, it was significantly different.
Okay.
You needed to be corrupt. So
that's a prerequisite.
Yeah, so literally if you were corrupt, you were in, you were fit for the job. Of course, you need to have a noble background or you need to be part of the clergy, definitely, but corruption was the key.
All right.
And we have an amazing legend here in Lublin, what underlines literally the corruption.
All right.
There was a widow, and she was actually doing well. She was living a little bit outside of Lublin. She had a farm, and she had a couple of kids, and life was good, nothing special. Sure. But one day the local nobleman figured out that that farm was making a bit of money and he wanted to add it at his portfolio. So he sent a couple of servants over and they simply asked the lady from, hey, our nobleman wants to buy your property, do you want to sell it off? And they made even an offer, but the bid was low. So the lady didn't need to have that much time, to think. It was from, oh, thank you, bye. 2 weeks later, those same two servants came back to the lady and their whole attitude had changed.
Right.
It was simply, all right, this is now property of our local nobleman, he owns it, and you will get the compensation for it. So they offered an amount of money and that bid was lower than the original bid. So you can imagine, the reaction of that lady.
Of course.
Yeah, furiously.
Not be pleased.
No, far from. It was from get off my property as quickly as you can go.
Sure.
Now.
Sure.
So, unfortunately for the widow, the same night they set her farm alight. So she started to prosecute. Of course, she could save her children and some paperwork. So she started to prosecute against that nobleman. And every court she went, she lost. Case after case because of the corruption. Everybody was bribed. So the case ended up here in Lublin on the market, the Crown Court, and there was a verdict. And the verdict was negative for the lady, for the widow. So she shouted it out, oh my God, even the devil will be more fair than you guys. She had barely spoken out those words, and through the Krakow gate, a beautiful horse carriage entered the market square. It stopped in front of the building, the courthouse, and a beautiful, well-dressed nobleman stepped out of that horse carriage and entered the building. And he stated, I'm a representative of the king, and we will redo this court session. And for whatever reason, Ben, believe me or not, they accepted it.
All right.
Yeah, they did.
Okay.
So the prosecutor started off with his speech again. A stream of nonsense was coming out of his mouth.
Of course.
Yeah, and so the new judge was listening. Yeah. And after a couple of minutes, he had enough of it. So he smacked his hand on the table. And he said, enough, enough. And he ruled. And the verdict was in favor of the lady. So you can imagine, tears of happiness were streaming down the cheeks. But yeah, Poland is a Catholic nation. So, of course, in the courtroom, there was a crucifix. At the same moment the verdict was given, Jesus Christ turned his head, he squeaked, and he started to cry bloody tears. Why? It was the devil ruling court here in Lublin.
Right. So it did fulfill that saying that the devil ruled fairer than the judge at the time.
Absolutely, he was much more fair than all those elected judges and ruling out of the name of the good Lord. Much fairer.
And the paw can still be seen on this very table. That's
Yes.
what the handprint is.
Yes, correctly, because this is the artifact. This is the real table. We believe it is literally the real deal that the devil ruled court here in Lublin, because there's a palm print in the table.
Right.
And at that time, people could not make with tools, and burners and handprints in the table. So we absolutely believe that the story is the real deal, and that I will say it in my best Polish, that the story, the legend of Czacha Łapa, really happened here in town.
The Crown Tribunal was instituted in 1578 when King Stefan Batory agreed to step down from his function as the supreme judge in matters relating to the nobility. Instead, the Polish nobility would in the future settle their disputes in court in either Lublin or Piotrków Trybunalski. Next up, we will ask Mr. Delbout about the importance of the Crown Tribunal for Lublin as a city.
Are there other artifacts related to that case? Because I would imagine one table might not be convincing enough.
No, you're absolutely right, Ben. Absolutely spot on. The story continues.
Right.
The next day, you can imagine those judges needed to come back to work. And they couldn't enter the building. At that time, the courthouse had steep stairs. And when they tried to climb up the stairs, they were falling down, breaking arms and legs and all that kind of stuff. So, not that nice.
Right.
So, the clergy, the priests, took out the crucifix out of the courtroom. They carried it around town in procession, and the spell was broken. And we have still the crucifix in our archcathedral in Lublin, so it is visible for the public. On the left-hand side of the altar is a chapel, and at the top of the chapel is a crucifix we are talking about. So we are 100% convinced here in town that the devil ruled court, and we have 2 pieces of proof.
Right. You're saying that the Crown Court is here in Lublin. I would imagine that's a very lucrative thing to having participated in the rulings.
Yeah, no, it was amazing for Lublin because literally the nobility had no other choice than to come over to Lublin if they had an argument with each other or there was a legal case, that they needed to defend themselves. And of course, it spun off an industry because people needed to sleep in the inns, etc., that kind of stuff. But it was also actually very interesting because it was an historical Tinder.
Tinder? Like a matchmaking thing?
Yeah, absolutely, because the creme de la creme of Poland, the high society, needed to come over to Lublin. Right. So if you were looking for a nice husband or a nice lady, and especially the parents were arranging that, you went in your horse carriage to Lublin. And you found there your lovely lady, your future partner. So this is how it was working.
Right, so essentially became like a blind dating spot for the high society at the time.
Absolutely. Nowadays, they have those fancy balls, where the nobility is coming together and dancing and all that kind of stuff. In that time, historically, they went to court.
You come to here. All right, awesome. So was there always a courthouse in the marketplace or not really? Is it a new thing?
No. Actually, it is an historical building, but it was previously our city hall.
Okay.
So they converted in 1578 our city hall into a court hall, and I built a new city hall in town. And nowadays, the building has a totally different function. You can also see that it has another facade than in the past. Nowadays, it is a wedding chapel. So if you have your civil wedding in Poland, you will have a wedding in a very historical building.
That's where you go.
Yeah, and also, and it matches again, with the Tindler story.
Right.
And also the cool thing is it is literally for some civil servants their office. So can you imagine that you have the privilege to work in such a beautiful historical building?
As we can see, Lublin is one of the oldest cities filled with historical monuments, but the beating heart of the city, the Lublin Castle, is right behind me. The castle was a prison for over a century when Poland was under occupation, but today it serves a positive purpose of being the city's main museum. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee. I'll see you next time on Poland Daily History.